welcome back, Marcus. Today, we've just seen how you can create a pipeline, how you can then use the pipeline to copy data in. But now I understand you're going to show us how we can now use a notebook to do something else with that data once it's brought into Fabric. Is that right?
Exactly right, Chris. We're going to take that copy data pipeline. We're going to add a notebook activity to that to take our files from our lakehouse and convert them into Delta tables so that we can then query that information in our lakehouse.
That's just brilliant. Let's head over and take a look at how you do this.
Sounds great. Let's head over to my screen here. And within my data engineering experience within Fabric, we're going to pull open that PL data copy blob to lakehouse pipeline that we just showed in the previous video. And we're going to add an activity after the copy data step. So I'm going to drag or click a notebook step here. And something to keep in mind when you're connecting activities, there's a couple of different options that you can connect them with here. So if I hover over my copy data task, you'll notice the green check is on success. So we want to drag that to the notebook. And what that is stating is if our copy data task is successful, we then want to move on to the next stage or step in our pipeline to run our notebook task. You do have some options as well. If the task were to fail, you could drag that arrow to an activity. On completion, you could drag that. So maybe at the complete end of your pipeline, maybe you have a specific activity such as a logging activity to an audit table or an alert message that you want to send to a group or an individual. And then you also have at the top a skipped message. So you could potentially skip an activity and move on to something else within your pipeline as well. So just something to keep in mind when you're connecting activities in pipelines, that there are a couple of different options based on the status of that activity. So in this notebook, what it is aiming to do is I'm going to create Delta tables from those files that we've dropped in to our lakehouse. And again, on the general tab for this, I want to change that timeout to just be an hour. We'll change that retry limit to 3 to mirror our copy data pipeline task if I hop back over there. And then again, we have a retry interval that we can set. We're going to leave that the default to 30. We have those secure output input options, which we're going to leave unchecked for this example. Now going to my settings tab, I'm going to pull in an existing notebook that I have in my workspace. So I'm going to pull in the Create Delta Tables notebook. And underneath that, just something to call out, you are able to set parameters in your Fabric notebooks that can then be called and set within your Fabric pipelines. In this notebook, we don't have any parameters as an example, but just calling out that you are able to leverage parameters in notebooks and then have values passed into those via your Fabric pipelines. And those would be set here if you had those.
Oh, interesting.
So now that I have that activity added and all of the settings are configured there, I'm going to go ahead and run my pipeline to recopy the data here.
Can I just run my notebook?
You could. So what I would suggest there, if you were just going to run it separately, you could remove your copy data task, but I don't want to remove that task because then I'd have to reconfigure it if I wanted to add it back into my pipeline. If I wanted to run the notebook separately, I'd either go and open the notebook resource and run it through that interface, or potentially I'd create another pipeline that just had my notebook resource or my notebook activity in there to run separately.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And we can see that it's queued up. And now that copy data task is in flight, in progress here. We can see that the copy data task succeeded. And now it's moving on to executing our notebook to create those delta tables in our lakehouse.
Wow. And so we saw there's those brief seconds of spinning up the node and now running the notebook itself. That's awesome.
Yep, so it's going to take, 10 seconds or so to spin that notebook resource up, get that running, and then it's going to go through the cell steps that it has to execute.
Wow. Now, this is amazing. And here we go. Still run. Now, I've got a question for you. You're showing us how we can build a pipeline to move data, so we're copying, we're running a notebook. But you mentioned several times about orchestration. Can I have a pipeline that runs pipelines? Is that what you mean by orchestration?
That's exactly right, Chris. So you can actually invoke another pipeline or execute another pipeline through this invoke pipeline stat or activity, excuse me. So in the next video, we're going to show how to create an orchestration pipeline that will call this data pipeline to be executed from there. So come back for the next video after we hopefully see this succeed. There we go.
Hey, there we go.
So what I did there is I clicked the glasses icon for the notebook task.
Okay.
And what that does is that takes you into the full logging history of all the steps and jobs that were run in that notebook.
Oh, wow. So all of these things were done as part of that 50 seconds.
Correct. So all things considered, pretty snappy job here to run all of that information in just a matter of minutes. All right, so we can see that our pipeline ran successfully here, both the copy task and the notebook execution to create those delta tables. So now let's go back into our lakehouse and see if those tables were created. We can see now that underneath our tables menu, we have 4 dimension tables and 1 fact table, which is all the information that we were looking to create for our tables. And to verify that there's data in there, let's switch over to our SQL endpoint in our upper right-hand menu here from our Lakehouse menu. And let's click on Dimension City. And there we go. We
Wow.
have data loaded in those tables and successfully took those files and created Delta tables in our Lakehouse.
I mean, this is just fantastic, Marcus. We've used pipelines to bring data in to our bronze layer. Now we've brought data into like our silver layer inside of our lake house, and it's available in SQL. Now I can't wait to see how we can do some orchestration around this to actually manage all of these loads in our next video. So excited about that.
Come on back for the next one.